Hey, what's going on, guys? Out here with another video, and we are going to be addressing a video that Teo Ministries just recently uploaded to their channel, trying to show that Africa is the real land of the Jews, or how the real Jerusalem is in Africa. And he has a couple of video clips and a couple of pictures of some maps that they are going to actually show in this video clip. And what we're going to do is just take a look at all of the information that has been provided by them, and we're going to use their sources, and we're just going to examine exactly what Yakoba is saying in this particular video, and we're just going to dissect it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video.
This is Negro land. Okay, now this is the territory that they have outlined as Negro land. Now, all of that, territory, in my opinion, goes all the way down to South Africa as well. But this is the territory known as Negro land, which I believe to be the biblical promised land. Just stick with me for a bit. I'm going to get you there. Okay, so here we see Negro land again in pink, right? It's called Negritrum Terra.
As we can already see, he has pictures of Africa, especially Western Africa, and he's trying to purport this land over here, which is quote unquote called Negro land. Now, he did kind of do a video maybe a while ago explaining how he came up with that name Negro land. We're not going to cover that in this video. There was some source, some book that him and some of these other quote unquote Hebrew Israelite guys have been reading. Somebody referenced this area as Negro land, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But as we can all see, so that we're all on the same page, that this land mass area that we're looking at currently, Mr. Yakoba from Teo Ministries, he's trying to purport that this is actually Israel,
the land of the Negroes, Negro land. Okay, now I believe it goes all the way down to Guinea, as we see that our people are all in there as well. But I believe this is the promised land here, from the Great Nile River all the way to Niger. This is the Abraham Bar Jacob, or the Hadaga map. So in the past, Hebrew geographical maps were relatively rare, but they all show the land of Israel as a separate entity, stressing the sanctity and uniqueness of the country of Judaism. Abraham Bar Jacob, a convert to Judaism, drew a map of the Holy Land following that of Christian Adracom, 1588, incorporating many Jewish elements such as the route of the Exodus from Egypt to Canaan and the designation of territories of the 12 tribes of Israel. The map was reproduced in a Passover Haggadah as one of the earliest Hebrew printed maps. So look at this map, family. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of the modern area we call Israel? Does that remind you of the modern area called Jerusalem?
Now, of course, Yakoba, once again, he believes that this landmass that we see is resembling the western part of Africa, that whole landmass that he was showing earlier. Now, you have to remember, his agenda is to convince people this landmass that we see that is on an ancient map, which was drawn up around 1588 or 1695, or actually it was actually drawn in 1695, but it was derived in 1588 by someone else. He's trying to purport that this land mass is actually in Africa. His whole agenda is to convince you that the Israel that we know today is actually Africa, based on the drawings of these maps. Now, one thing that we do have to keep in mind, these maps were drawn during a time where we did not have satellite imagery. We did not have any of the technology that we have today, to where we can actually pinpoint where borders are, the size of a certain piece of land, how it will look, etc. So these are things that, and actually the people who made these maps back in the day, I mean, they did a quite remarkable job based on tools that they had at the time to possess this information, or to get this information out there. So we also have to keep that in mind, and we have to know that these maps are not entirely accurate. We did not have access, or they did not have access to the technology that we have today to get a more accurate understanding of how certain land masses are laid out. So I just want to keep you guys in mind that what he's trying to purport is that the way that the map is drawn is similar to what we see on a modern day drawing of that region that he showed earlier on Western Africa.
All right, so once again, this is the original map. It's the same as the color one, and you can see these Hebrew writings on it, right? Once again,
this is a hand-drawn map back in the 1600s, and I just got finished explaining that they did not, once again, let me repeat, they did not have tools that we have today to get an accurate depiction on what the country actually looked like.
This territory here does not look like the Middle East, right? Remember, the Middle East goes on a slant. It's on a diagonal.
The map in question is of the Holy Land and was made for the 1695 Amsterdam edition of the Haggadah by Abraham Bar Jacob, a Christian pastor from Germany who had converted to Judaism in 1689.
Now, I want to go ahead and stop right here. The guy that you hear talking is, I can't remember his name, but he is a guy who studies maps, and he's talking about this 1695 Amsterdam Haggadah map. He was kind of doing a speech, or he was giving a presentation about how some of these maps, they kind of inspired each other during the time. So therefore you had a certain guy. I don't really have the information in front of me. I didn't really do too much background information or try to get too many names, because all of that stuff is kind of irrelevant. I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole, but in a nutshell, the point of his whole speech is that you had someone who drew a map. As time went on, his map inspired others who were known for making maps. They basically used his writings and his imagery in order to make maps of their own. That's basically what the point of his whole speech was. It wasn't trying to prove Israel is actually in Africa or anything like that. And to Yacoba's credit, that's not what he's saying that this guy's trying to do as well. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to say that Yacoba's saying that this guy is trying to make a comparison between Africa and Israel. I'm just saying that this guy, the point of his original speech was about comparing maps.
And became an engraver in Amsterdam. Here we see the map. The phrase at the top of the map informs us of its purpose. I'll transcribe that here. This map is to inform every knowing person of the route of the 40-year journey in the desert and the breadth and length of the Holy Land, from the river of Egypt to the city of Damascus, and from the valley of Ammon to the great sea, and within the land, the territory of each tribe, as your eyes will see, and the wise will understand. The third decorative element from the Haggadah map that I would like to consider is the image of a woman riding a crocodile in the lower right corner of the map, who personifies Africa. The appearance of an essentially naked woman on a Hebraic map may seem surprising, but in fact it shouldn't. Similar images may be found on the title pages of many Hebraic books, including Bibles. The personification of the continents has a long tradition, as we see here. And in this 15th century manuscript of Ptolemy's geography, a woman riding a crocodile personifies Asia. A woman riding a crocodile was first used to personify Africa on a world map of 1594 by Petrus Plancius. But as we can see by studying the two images side by side, Plancius's image, while similar, may not have been the direct source for that on the Haggadah map.
This character right here is the personification of a continent according to him. It's the personification of Africa. Now, the other thing he did, and I'm going to show you that, so keep that in mind. So we have a landmass that looks like Negro land, right? And we have a landmass called Negro land, and let me get out of the zoom up view and read the description. A good example of the 1712 Amsterdam Haggadah and map of the Holy Land, the first obtainable map of the Holy Land to utilize entirely Hebrew lettering. So this here, according to this, see the description, says it is the Holy Land, right? This image right here of the person sitting on a crocodile with the little umbrella or whatever you call those things is the personification of Africa. If this woman sitting on a crocodile in the lower right corner with the umbrella, as we showed in the Mercator map, is the personification of Africa, then this map is Africa. Now, the question is, what part of Africa are we talking about? I make the contention that this is Negro land.
Now, let's go ahead and stop right there for a moment. That's not what the speaker was actually saying. I think that explanation went right over his head. That image, it does not represent the entirety of the map. So that image of the woman who personifies Africa, she is not represented as the whole map. That image down in the bottom right hand corner is to show exactly where the continent of Africa was. So with this being a map, what we do see is that Israel, the main landmass that we're looking at, everything that's in the Hebraic writing, that is the main focal point of the map. But the lady, the image of the woman on the crocodile, has nothing to do with the main image. The image that she represents is just showing that Africa is kind of, she's actually a marker point of where Africa is. So she doesn't represent the whole map. So if anyone who was reading this map back in, I think it was 1695 it said it was, but if anyone was to read that map to know where they are, they would know that Africa would be down there in the bottom right hand corner. So therefore it would kind of let them know about what region or exactly where they are on the map. So once again, that image is not representing the entire landmass as Africa like it would be a logo or something like that. It just shows exactly where Africa is. So they placed her on that landmass to show that that is where Africa is.
Now, because it looks like Negro land. And with it we see that Negro land is what? The land of the Jews. And Negro land is what? The promised land. At least according to this map here, if we assume this is Negro land, right?
Now, once again, what Yacoba is doing is that he's comparing apples to oranges. He's comparing an ancient map of Israel to a modern artist rendition of what Africa looks like today. And that's why he keeps saying that this looks like Negro land, but you can't really make that comparison because you're comparing apples to oranges. You're showing two different maps from two different time periods. You're showing a modernized version of the map versus an ancient version of the map. Now, we all do know the way that Israel is situated on this particular map. We know that the land is not shaped like that. Just because this landmass looks the way that it does now, and just because it looks similar to a certain landmass that is on a modern map today, it doesn't mean that it is the same landmass. And what Yacoba is doing is that he's using a tactic called mimicism. And if something looks like something else, then therefore one derived from the other. But once again, this landmass of Israel is not the same landmass that is over in Africa. Although this ancient drawing may look similar to what a modern map of that landmass of what he calls Negro land, they do look similar on paper. But again, you're comparing a map that was drawn in 1695 versus a map that is drawn today.
That the Haggadah map is Negro land. Because it says this is the personification of Africa, right? We saw the map of that. Then this map must be Africa in my region. This is a portion of the Cottonian map of 995, right? Reoriented with north at the top, showing just Africa. I'm going to show you a different orientation because this orientation sort of messed me up, right? But I want you to look at this. I'm going to flip it around. But I want you to look at this map. See right here on the right-hand side, it shows Egyptus Superior. And on the left-hand side, it shows Mauritania to prove that this map is Africa. I'm going to show you the other one because it's a little clearer. If you look here, family, my contention is this is the east part of Africa, right? Because here we see the circle right there. It says Egyptus Superior. And then on the west coast, right, it shows Mauritania.
Now, what you have to understand is that what Teo is doing, or Yakoba from Teo Ministries, he is actually manipulated how the map is originally situated. So what he's trying to say, since the map doesn't look familiar to him, and by the way, this is another hand-drawn map that was done back in ancient times, where once again they did not have the technology that we have to be able to accurately map out how the world actually looked at that time. They didn't have the tools and they didn't have the technology that we have today. What we're going to do is we're going to bring up a picture of a modern map and we're going to make a comparison. And all we need to do is use the certain markers of what it looks like. Now, like I said, Teo has taken this map, this original map, and he's inverted it to make it fit his narrative. As we can see in this map, if we were to put this map sideways, we can see that Israel looks like it would be to what we would consider the north of this map. And then we would have Egypt here, and then we would have Jordan, and then if we go further down, which he considers the west coast of how he's flipped the map, we would run into Ethiopia and Somalia and places such as that. So what Yakoba is doing, he's actually being quite dishonest right now, and he's actually manipulating a map to paint his narrative.
All right, now there's a little tongue right here in the middle, right, and you will see a little circle right there. It says Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Now the question is, where is this, right? Because at the very top of the map you'll see Libya, and right on that diagonal is Jerusalem. Now since this particular map isn't proportional to our modern maps, it's sort of hard to pinpoint the location. So the question is, could it be the Kalahari Desert? I don't know. Could it be over there by the Orange River? I don't know. Could it be over there by Cameroon? I mean, it looks to me like it's near Nigeria and Cameroon, right? So my contention is, okay, here we see East Africa because we got Egyptus, we got Media, we got Syria over here on the east, right? We have Persia, we have Chaldea, we have the Ammonites.
Now, once again, like I said, what Yakoba is doing is very deceptive. We all know that Egypt does not sit on the east coast of Africa. We know that it sits on the west coast of Africa. So for him to say that Egypt is sitting on the east, I don't know if Yakoba understands where Egypt sits, or I don't know if he tried to look at an African map, if he's actually looked at any of this stuff. On a modern map where he has the word east, it shows where Egypt would sit, and he's trying to say that the way that he has this map turned, he can compare that to a modern day map of what we have, or how the map currently sits. So he's taking a map that he's twisted himself in order to try to fit his narrative. I mean, as we can see, we have Egypt right here to the north, or what he has made the east, and then below that we have Ethiopia. Now we know that Ethiopia does not sit at the top of Africa. We know that as well. We know Syria does not sit east of Africa. We know that these regions are actually sitting to the north of Africa. And once again, once we look at this map, this was not a map that was made accurately. Again, this is basically what they had at the time, and they were just basically doing a drawing to kind of let merchants or whoever was sailing to kind of let them know exactly where they are at certain points. I mean, we can even see the Nile River where it splits off at the delta. That does not show up in the middle of Africa. That's all the way by Egypt, and it connects to the Nile River and it flows out. But Yakoba, it almost seems like that he's being somewhat deceptive right now, and this is where his arguments really starts to fall apart.
All in this area where modern Middle East is. So over here, if you look all the way to the far right, that circle, it says Arabia. See the little tongue? You have Arabia. So we know this is the east part of the continent, right? Well, that goes into the Middle East. Now, one thing I want to show you again is the Haggadah map, because if you look at the Haggadah map, and remember, we saw on the colored version of the Haggadah map that they stated that they take out pieces of the continent. That's what they stated. It's not the whole thing, right? And we can tell from this coastline that this doesn't fit anywhere else. It definitely doesn't fit the Middle East. So this coastline, from what I can see, fits what? Parts of Africa.
Now, let's go ahead and stop right there, because he's trying to say that this coastline meets, or it is the same as what he's trying to purport as Negro land. Now, one thing that I do want people to realize is that when we compare both of these maps, let's just take this picture of Africa where it meets the Middle East. We're going to flip it just the way Teo did, but we're actually going to be honest with ours. So we're going to take this map and we are going to flip it the way that it is currently sitting. If we watch, or if we're actually paying attention to the map, how we have Africa down to our bottom right, and we are going to actually take a look at where Israel sits. So if we actually look at our map and we see where Israel sits, and we actually do see where it does join together with Africa on the country of Egypt, we can see that that landmass actually looks a lot more accurate than what he's trying to purport. Because what Yacoba is trying to do, let's go back to the image that he's shown us at the beginning of the video, which is called Negro Land. You can see that Negro Land does not have a coastline except for all the way to the west. So he's trying to say that this part right here on the west coast of Negro Land is somewhat similar, or in a way he's kind of confusing. He's showing the shape of Negro Land, and then he's showing the shape of Israel on an ancient map. So he's trying to compare a modern map to an ancient map, and he's trying to say that that landmass is the same shape of what we see in an ancient map. But if we look at it the way it is, it does not look like that Negro Land, what he's trying to purport, has any coastline to the south of it. The only coastline that we can see is right here on the west of it, but that doesn't seem like that's the argument that he's making, because even if we do take the image and flip it to where you do have the western part of Africa facing downward, you still cannot get that same shape that is actually on the ancient map compared to the modern map. So still his argument is starting to fall apart right now, and right now I'm kind of lost, because I'm trying to figure out exactly what does he think he's looking at, because we can clearly see where the delta is right here, where all of these where the four rivers or so come together. So I don't know what Teo thinks he's looking at, but he's not even using the markers. He's not even using where Egypt and Israel is connecting.
Right, and not only that, we have the personification image, which we showed the Mercator map. The Mercator Atlas ties this particular map personification to Africa. And I'm going to show that one more time.
And once again, we have to clear this up, because Yacoba believes that he is actually looking at a map of Africa. Now, once again, that image of that woman has nothing to do with the representation of the whole map. That image is just showing where Africa is. And once again, if we look at our map and we turn it the way that it was turned originally, focusing on Israel, we can actually see that things actually line up. We have the landmass of Israel, and then we have down to the bottom right Africa, and then we can also see where the delta is, where the rivers actually connect. I think that is the Mediterranean Sea. We actually see more of an accurate comparison versus what Yacoba is trying to purport. It seems like that he's just confused right now what he's looking at, because I think that he's trying to push a narrative, and he's really trying so hard to make this land of Israel be the land that is actually in Africa, and it's not fitting. But if we actually do look at this map, we can see where the river runs out, and we can see that this image of this woman is showing where Africa sits. So therefore, anyone who would use this map will actually know where they are.
Okay, I want you to look at something else too, fam. If you look on the right side, because here's my contention, okay, and you got to watch the video, it'll really help. Over here, my contention is that the west coast of Africa is probably on the right side of this image, and the east coast is probably on the left. right? So right here, it's an article, how North ended up on the top of the map. See, as you see here, Africa is flipped, just like we saw in the other map. So why do maps always show the North as up? For those who don't just take it for granted, the common answer is that the Europeans made the maps and they wanted to be on top. But there's really no good reason for the North to claim top-notch cartographic real estate over any other bearing, as an examination of old maps from different places and periods can confirm. The profound arbitrariness of our current cartographic conventions was made evident by MacArthur's Universal Corrective Map of the World, an iconic upside-down view of the world that recently celebrated its 35th anniversary. Launched by Australian Stuart MacArthur on January 26, 1979, this map is supposed to challenge our casual acceptance of European perspectives as global norms. But seen today with the title Australia, no longer down under, it's hard not to wonder why the upside-down map, for all its subserviousness, wasn't called Botswana, back where it belongs, or perhaps Paraguay paramount. The MacArthur map also makes us wonder why we are so quick to assume that Northern Europeans were the ones who invented the modern map and decided which way to hold it in the first place. As is so often the case, our eagerness to invoke Eurocentrism displays a certain bias of its own, since in fact the North's elite cartographic status owes more to Byzantine monks and Majorcan Jews than it does to any Englishman. There is nothing inevitable or intrinsically correct, not in geographic, cartographic, or even philosophical terms, about the North being represented as up, because up on a map is a human construct, not a natural one. Some of the very earliest Egyptian maps show the South as up, presumably equating the Nile's northward flow with the force of gravity. And there was a long stretch in the medieval era when most European maps were drawn with the east on top. If there was any doubt about this move's religious significance, they illuminated it with their map's pious illustrations, whether of Adam and Eve or Christ enthroned. In the same period, Arab map makers often drew maps with the south facing up, possibly because this was how the Chinese did it. My contention is that this looks like Negro land to me. And according to this description, the Haggadah map is a map of the Holy Land.
Now, Teo said a mouthful, or actually Yakoba from Teo Ministry said a mouthful. Now, even if we did take his image that he actually used at the beginning of this video and we flip it and we invert it the way that he said, and he just explained that a lot of ancient maps flipped the landmasses upside down, we can still see that Negro land, what he calls Negro land in the western part of Africa, still does not align with the image that he's trying to purport of ancient Israel on the map. And you still do not see any coastline, because Negro land is surrounded by two land masses on the north and the south of it, no matter which way you flip it. And the only water that we do see is actually on the west coast. And we're comparing a modern map to an ancient map of Israel. So once again, I think that Yakoba's arguments are pretty weak of trying to show that Israel is in Africa, even when you look at ancient maps, because once again, once we look at it and we flip these maps according to the modern maps that we see today, they do line up when you start to look at certain land markers, especially like the Nile River and the Delta. This whole argument, or whatever Teo was trying to purport, this agenda that he's trying to push, or this narrative that he's trying to push, that ancient Israel is actually in Africa, I think that he really doesn't understand what he's reading. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to say. And the first thing is that I don't know if he's actually being deceptive or he is willfully ignorant. Now, I would like to think that it's more of the latter than the former, because I wouldn't want to say that this guy is actually trying to be deceptive. I just think that he does not understand what he's actually looking at. I don't think that he understands or comprehends the information that he has received, plus the information that he's trying to put out. I'm hoping that this video can put this whole Africa and Israel thing to rest. I hope you guys have found this video informative, and we can clearly see with our own eyes, even if we take our modern maps and compare it to the ancient maps, that you can actually see that what Yakoba is trying to purport this narrative that Israel is actually in Africa, we can clearly see that he is clearly in error, and I don't think that he understands anything that he's saying. So anyway, guys, you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. You know, do you think that Israel is actually in Africa, in Negro land, like Yakoba is purporting? Or do you actually think that Africa is Africa and Israel is Israel? They are two different land masses, and you can't try to intertwine the two. Let's just accept that Israel is where it is. It's in the Middle East, and that is not in Africa. But whatever you guys think, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, like, rate, share, comment, subscribe, and you guys have a blessed day.